Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again in this YouTube astrological segment. I'm going to be talking about astrology and retirement of Tom Brady. Tom Brady, as many of you may know, you could say now was a renowned NFL quarterback. The retirement was a little bit shocking to me. I know he had contemplated this earlier. He had said recently that he was at least thinking about it at this time, and he had to consider his family. And Now it's official. And I want to talk about his chart and natal placements and some transits that may be connected with this, and also just talking about him, his chart, how it may relate to him as a player as well. And anyway, I just in that the chart, I mean, natally, I mean, he is a Leo sun, Aries moon and Libra rising. He's the sun, Leo, of course, wants to dominate. He has it in the 10th house of career. And then the moon in Aries shows a lot of that competitive zeal, I believe, in the fact that wanting to, the sun and Leo wanting to dominate, to stand out, to shine, to flourish, and doing so. The moon in Aries, that emotion, with that emotional need, perhaps for sports and competition, and it's also a violent sport. Your Aries is connected with violence, and I would say, especially, I mean, if you're talking about a sport, football could be one of them because football is a violent sport. He has also Aries on the 7th house of competition in his chart, and flavored with a Libra ascendant, doing so perhaps with a lot of balance and order, and using certain intellectual ability as well, and following the team concept, doing so by really collaborating with others and cooperating with people on his team. And the thing is, having a I mean, his chart. I mean, I see a number of things here that just show why he could have been very successful. The moon in Aries is also at the it's an apex point of a yod in his chart, and the apex point of a yod can show a tremendous prodigious achievement if you work through the inconjuncts of the other two astrological energies involved in the yod configuration to that apex point. And I'm sure he likely did this because he was very successful at what he did. He was, some may believe unequivocally, he is the greatest NFL quarterback of all time, and maybe even the greatest NFL player. I believe he is the greatest as far as if you're to separate, the greatest NFL quarterback from the best, greatest, the GOAT. As far as the individual accolades and accomplishments and achievements, I would say Tom Brady was, obviously was the best irrebutably, with the 7 Super Bowl titles, all numerous playoff wins and appearances, statistical honors, and being at the top of a number of NFL statistical categories or near the top, the best of all time. Actually, maybe Aaron Rodgers based on individual talent and ability. But anyway, and just looking at his chart, he has the sun in at least a loose conjunction to his natal Saturn in Leo. And Leo can have a connection with sports. It's in the 10th house of career. He was likely older than his years and was able to take on a role what he did, and being an NFL quarterback, young age, and doing and being able and winning a Super Bowl at a relatively young age, I should say. His Mercury has his Mercury that's in its dignity in Virgo in the 11th house of clubs and groups and organizations. Mercury in Virgo, I'm just checking to make sure. I believe it is a singleton. It's his only planet in Earth in his chart, and it makes it stand out more. And again, he does have it in its dignity in Virgo. It's an excellent placement forwards. It just shows his analytical mind in groups. The fact that it's in Mercury's in Virgo in the 11th house in his chart, and being able to, Mercury in Virgo, it's an excellent placement if you're trying to dissect defenses in sports, and that's what he did, and I'm sure he's very proficient at it. What I want to get at, and also he had what was interesting too, he's got is the Grand Fire trine in his chart, Grand Fire trine configuration, which consists of the Neptune and Sagittarius in the second house of money. It's big dream. Neptune and Sag by itself can, even though it's generational, may manifest in big, grandiose sports dreams, which he had. He has it in the second house of money. Moon in Aries, which I talked about before. The emotional need could be for sport that could be violent, which is football, and also for just being a leader on the team and being it's in the sixth house of employment. And Aries can have a connection with sports. It's a competition, and also to the Sun in Leo in the 10th house, and that's all part of a grand fire trine configuration. And the thing that stands out to me actually in all of it really is that Neptune and Sagittarius having those big dreams, and the big dreams and also ones that can be associated with sports, because Sagittarius of course can have a connection with sports. And the thing about this in Moon in Aries, he did have the moon can be connected with how as far as being recognized by the public, and Aries is about leadership, and he is somebody that obviously being a quarterback position, you're basically the architect, you're the leader of that offense. And he had the Sun in Leo, which of course can want to dominate, can shine actually in sports, and be able to really and he had all this in a grand fire trine, so it's configuration, so it's not surprising he flourished and thrived in what he did as an athlete. Now what I want to get to as well, he also when a transit that I noticed that he had take place at the time of this retirement, he has transit Jupiter and Pisces in the 5th house, which may not be a big thing by itself, but the thing is it opposes the focal point of a mutable T-square configuration he has. He has a mutable T-square configuration which consists of Neptune and Sagittarius opposing Mars and Gemini, and those 2 points being squared by Mercury and Virgo in the 11th house. Transit Jupiter is making an opposition to that focal point. Transit Jupiter in Pisces making opposition to his natal Mercury in Virgo. And when you have a transit that makes an opposition to a focal point in a T-square configuration in your chart, often significant events can transpire at that time, and this is certainly no exception, I would say. Jupiter being in Pisces, and Jupiter by itself, it's in the transit. Jupiter is in his 5th house of sports, and Jupiter can enlarge things. It can enlarge dissolving, dissipation, and it's in the 5th house of sports. This could be an indicator of something dissolving, sports related at this time. And the 5th house is also the house of personal popularity. And another thing too that I noticed as well in his chart, as far as a transit goes, transit Neptune is applying conjunction to his natal 6th house, and Neptune can be about dissolving and dissipation, and in the 6th house is the house of work and employment. So this could be the indicator of a dissolving and dissipation of one's work life. And that is really what has actually happened. He has a number of, there's a number of transits right now that are in the zodiac sign Capricorn. And it's interesting because Capricorn's about one's career. It's about, aging, and he's not, an old person by any means, like 44 years old. But he is planning. I'd say, Capricorn is very introspective. It's premeditative energy. It's planning a lot for the latter part of life. He has Capricorn natally on his fourth house cusp of the latter part of life. And right now, I think it's about time where he's just taking responsibility for that. He's got the transit Mercury is in his fourth house at this time. Mercury, again, being an introspective Capricorn in the mind. Mercury in Capricorn, even in transit, can be where people are more about planning. The thinking is introspective, and it's also a lot of premeditative thought. And the fourth house is the latter part of life, so I think a lot of thinking went into this. Mercury right now is currently retrograde, so that reflects a lot of reviewing that Tom Brady likely had regarding this as well. Hold on a moment, people. Sorry about that, I'm back. But anyway, and really, just looking at his, looking at this, it's just not surprising that he did, come to this decision. I had speculated that he was either actually going to retire this season after he made some recent statements and comments regarding that he was contemplating retirement. I had a feeling he either was going to actually retire during this off season, or he was going to play for one more season. My feeling was that he wasn't going to play any more than one more season. So it was a little bit of surprising that this came very early, very, as far as the proximity in time from the time he actually made those initial statements about contemplating retirement. So it just, right now, maybe it is really the best, might be a good time for him. He is 44 years old, but be 40. I believe he's 45. I'm just checking the birth date, make sure I'm saying this right. He was born in 1977. He will be 45 in August. And that is, he definitely paid more than his dues, I would say. And the thing is, there's really not much more I'm going to add at this time as far as his natal placements and transits in his chart. I'm looking, thing too I thought was interesting that I wanted to state, though, in his opposition with Neptune opposing his Mars. And what's interesting is that natally, Neptune in adverse aspect to Mars could often indicate people that maybe would prefer fantasizing or daydreaming as opposed to taking action. But I did not see Tom Brady as anyone that was lackadaisical or lethargic, or he seemed like somebody to me that was a person that was very motivated to do things and have a lot of activity. And I think when I look with him as far as how that opposition with the Neptune and Sagittarius may have manifested with the the opposition Neptune and Sag opposing Mars and Gemini, how that manifests with him. Well, I think a lot of it was that maybe something about that aspect. It tells me that just looking at it, that considering that Neptune is about surrendering, and Sagittarius could be connected with sports, the fact is that you have the opposition with Mars, which is anger. Tells me that he might have just become a little more acerbic than the average person if he actually had to yield or surrender in some sports, something sports related in competition. And he was a person that was always about getting retribution, seeking retribution after a loss, and perhaps that's how this manifested with him. Mars and Gemini, by itself, can give a lot of energy that's cerebral in trying to outmaneuver in his case, maybe the opposition. Um, and it's a lot of cerebral, I would say, a lot of cerebral energy, and a lot of just, just general mobility. A lot of energy, and just kind of, moving around, being mobile, I would say. Um, I don't know if he had, and just really, it's a lot of, and also I would say Mars and Gemini could also give very good dexterity manually as far as dexterity goes as well. And um, I would say, as well, looking at this, he also has Jupiter um, conjunct Venus, which of course could be a very good, placement for money. You have Jupiter's about prosperity, Venus is about money. Jupiter is in, he has Jupiter in Gemini, but Jupiter is in the ninth house of sport, which could be, the ninth house could be connected with sports. Jupiter in Gemini can be lucky when expressing their versatility, being able to, as far as being shrewd, cunning, um, and I think too, when just being cerebral, just express and just being dexterous as well, that can enlarge, I would say, manual dexterity. And he does have, he has this conjunct Venus, so that is a way of making money as well through that enlargement, through of those Gemini, of that Gemini energy that I just described, which is indicated by Jupiter being in Gemini. And it's really just, to me, I mean, he just got a very good, obviously a very good chart as far as sports go for him. And the thing, I mean, again, I'm just trying to see if there's anything else that I could, add um, to this. I just noticed as well is that, it transit Chiron in Aries in the sixth house. So, there might be some, in sixth house is about our physical health, and, Chiron could be connected, with some kind of physical, related wounds or injuries. There might have been something going on physically that we may not have known about with Tom Brady. Um, this is, this is something too. I mean, Pluto, transit Pluto, of course, is in Capricorn, and I don't know if I remember this right. I don't know if Tom Brady had something with, knee surgery, but if he had, maybe that had something to do with him playing, as far as um, the latter part of life would go, and him getting ready for that, maybe a little bit sooner than some people anticipated. So anyway, people, that's gonna be it for this YouTube astrological segment. I just want to say, Tom Brady, I'm sure will never even view this video, but I just want to say that I'm going to thank him for what he brought to the NFL, being, for his laudable achievements and effort, the character and heart he showed for 22 awesome seasons when he came into the league. I mean, I don't think anybody could have really envisioned what this man was going to do. It's like unprecedented. I saw something on TV one day where he was, it showed Tom Brady's first game. I guess presumably it was at least the first full game he played. And it was, if I remember right, it was against Peyton Manning. And the Patriots dismantled the Colts in that game. It was unbelievable. I looked when I saw the highlights of that game. I said that was Tom Brady's first game, and he did this against, I believe it was Manning and the Colts, and it was a big upset. My understanding, I think the Colts were good favorites over the Patriots in that game, and that was just such a good harbinger of things to come. And I'm sure there were people at that time that were even cynical and skeptical about him and said, "Oh, that was just a flash in the pan." He flourished in that game because that was his first regular game he played, and the defenses just weren't prepared for it. And then he proved again and again afterwards to the naysayers, I'm sure, that he He was for real, and it wasn't just a flash in the pan. And we found out about whatever is 20 plus seasons later that it was far from that. And what this person did, he may not have an overly flamboyant style, but he went in there and got the job done very consistently. It was very hard to beat when he was quarterback on a team, to beat him 2 times in the same season, because he had such tremendous resiliency. And you know his effort, his character, his heart, on the field, his passion, desire for this game. I mean, it's like he's got Pluto conjunct the ascendant. That might have played a role in him being just a very passionate person, and also someone that would seek, retribution after he'd lose to that team. When he'd play him again, he was going to do whatever he could to defeat that team that had previously beaten him. And that's just, I mean, it was just such a person, just a complete champion. And he's someone that obviously set an example for many people out there, to emulate and follow. And even though he had beaten my Jets a number of times, and I got to give credit where credit's due, he was, as far as he's definitely unequivocally the GOAT, the greatest quarterback of all time. And thanks for the memories, Tom. And anyway, that's it. That'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.